Vladimir Putin once described the collapse of the Soviet Union as the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. Note the word geopolitical. This is key.
I don't think it's the Soviet Union per se he was missing. He was missing the imperial grandeur of it.
Putin was shaped by the Cold War. He was 10 years old during the Cuban Missile Crisis when Khrushchev and Kennedy walked the world to the brink of nuclear war and then stepped back.
But I think what happened today in Russia...
Khrushchev's great-granddaughter says it's not the ideology that Putin wants to recreate, it's the power.
The empire was then recognized, feared, was taken into account, even if it had to fight with guns and weapons to be taken into account. And I think it always goes for all Russian and Soviet leaders, is that they just wanted to be treated decently by the West. So as I kind of like to joke, although it's no laughing matter anymore, is that they don't want to be seated at the children's table next to the toilet.
When the Soviet Union collapsed, that is pretty much where Russia found itself. With a president who went from hero to zero in the turbulent 90s, dictated to by the United States, the only remaining superpower. Vladimir Putin has been through 4 US presidents in his 22 years in power. From George W. Bush, who looked into his soul and decided he trusted him, through the difficult Obama years, the fraught Trump presidency, and now Joe Biden, who once claimed he told Putin to his face he didn't think he had a soul. No matter who was in the White House, President Putin's aim was always the same: to push back against the unipolar American world order. That's what his war in Syria was about. That's what Crimea and Donbass were about. He believed that Ukraine's pro-Western leaders were American puppets. But then came the invasion. Perhaps Putin miscalculated the strength of Ukrainian resistance. Perhaps he underestimated the Western response. But if he was looking for a seat at the top table, he blew it.
Basically, with that war, whatever those hopes you had to be treated as not equal, but at least as somebody who you can be conversed with, that's gone. There's no more conversation. There's a word in Russian, рукопожательный, or не рукопожательный, is a non-handshakeable.
Can't shake his hand, yeah.
Right, exactly. So Russia now is non-handshakeable. So yes, and it's also kind of also very Russian thing is that you try to make it work and then you're like, damn with it. Let's just go and shoot off, not only shoot myself in the foot or shoot Putin shot the country in the foot. Just let's take a cannon and chop off the whole leg, almost to the waist.
Russia is now almost completely cut off from the West, not just economically and in terms of trade. Car manufacturers can't get the parts they need. Aeroplanes will soon stop flying, but culturally and morally as well.
Oh, I think he is a war coming.
So where can Moscow turn? There is one obvious answer. Beijing. China's economic dominance has been long foretold, but it's now coming of age as a global political force. In early February, Putin flew to Beijing for a meeting with Xi Jinping. The two leaders announced a strategic partnership which would have no limits. 2 weeks later, Putin invaded Ukraine, and Beijing has made it clear it will continue to support Russia no matter what sanctions are threatened by the West.
Why should China sabotage its relations with Russia on the one hand and its relations with Ukraine on the other hand? It doesn't make sense as far as China is concerned, and to threaten to sanction China is going to be suicidal. Why?
Right, so those relations between China and Russia will continue regardless of this war.
Absolutely. Now, whether the relations can even gain further strength, that's another thing. And that's really between China and Russia to decide. At
the end of the 1980s, the Soviet world was beginning to crumble. In Moscow, they had glasnost and perestroika. In Beijing, Tiananmen Square. When the Soviet Union collapsed, China took note. As Victor Gao remembers, he was Deng Xiaoping's interpreter.
China learned a big lesson. That is, China needs to stand firm on its matters of principle. China needs to maintain domestic stability at any cost. And China wants to do whatever it can to stay away from wars or military conflicts of any kind. I think this is the lesson for China when we look back at the collapse of the former Soviet Union. No country, big or small, should overreach.
Russia has overreached in Ukraine. Beijing's support will come at a price. This will not be a relationship of equals. And Putin may have lost his chance to cement Russia's status as a global force, just as China is helping to break America's dominance.